The most profound grief is watching your child's light extinguish. Tonight, I will tear down the gilded cage that trapped my Aurora, even if it costs me everything. I have always prided myself on my composure, a steadfast pillar of strength for my family. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepares a mother's soul for the slow, agonizing erosion of her child's spirit. My daughter, Aurora, the vibrant, fearless woman who once chased global stories with a burning zeal, had become a ghost wrapped in silk. 5 years. 5 endless years since she married Marcus Vance, the golden boy of the impenetrable Vance dynasty, a family whose wealth was measured not in mere millions, but in generations of quiet, ruthless control. I smiled through the elaborate wedding, a forced, brittle gesture, even as a shiver of dread traced its way down my spine. The venue was a fortress of marble and privilege. I kept my concerns silently locked away when she moved into the sprawling, soulless Vance estate instead of carving out a home for herself and her new husband. Establishing their own separate domain, a place where her powerful, independent voice could still resonate, was something I'd urged. Yet, my advice, once treasured, became an inconvenience. I even bit my tongue, holding back the bitter words, when she gradually retreated from her stellar career. Aurora, at 37 years old, a woman whose investigative reports had won 3 prestigious national awards, capable of shaping public discourse, was now preoccupied with coordinating the family's annual charitable gala, a mere footnote to their legacy. After all, I rationalized, she is a grown woman. Who am I, Eleanor, to dictate the terms of her happiness? But as I drove this battered, reliable car through the relentless late December snowstorm, my knuckles white against the steering wheel, my heart screaming, I could no longer maintain the illusion of health or normalcy. My daughter, who once called me daily, sharing every aspiration and fear, now communicated primarily through sterile 2-word texts, filtered by her husband's executive assistant. The fiery, opinionated journalist had been replaced by a subdued, almost timid echo. She would actually look to Marcus for a subtle nod or a tiny, almost imperceptible hand gesture before daring to voice any opinion that deviated from the Vance narrative. The final shattering blow arrived 4 days ago. A text message, not from Aurora's personal cherished phone, but from an encrypted line used by Marcus Vance himself. The message was succinct, cold, and utterly dehumanizing. Aurora is fully committed to the Vance family's annual New Year's traditions this year. Perhaps you can visit briefly after the holidays if our schedule permits. A single short meeting. No media coverage allowed. Our schedule permits. The phrase echoed in the small cabin of my car, an icy dagger of possessiveness. As if my own beloved daughter, my flesh and blood, had been reduced to a mere slot in the Vance calendar, a utility item to be scheduled or discarded at their convenience. The righteous anger, which I had carefully suppressed for 5 long years, finally erupted, heating the freezing air around me. It was not just about control. It was about the utter dehumanization of a woman I had raised to value her autonomy above all else. The digital clock on my dashboard glowed a stark red. 10:18 p.m. Less than 2 grueling hours remained before the explosive, highly anticipated online exposé by independent financial journalist Leo Maxwell would drop. This report was rumored to contain irrefutable evidence that would irrevocably shatter the immaculate facade of the Vance dynasty. The wealth, the power, the carefully curated image of benevolence, all poised to collapse into a mountain of scandalous debt and unethical, borderline illegal dealings. It was at that exact high-stakes moment that a cryptic, unscheduled message flashed on my own burner phone. It was from Isabel Vance, Marcus's younger sister, the black sheep of the family who had silently suffered on the fringes. A member of the inner circle, the tight-knit group I believed to be impenetrable, was making contact. She claimed to possess information, critical, verifiable information, that could offer my Aurora a protective shield from the imminent devastation. My instincts, sharpened by decades of motherhood and a career in crisis management, immediately took over. If Isabel truly holds the key, this is not just a chance. It is a miracle, I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly. but trust is a luxury I cannot afford right now. I decided on a contingency plan, a crucial, non-negotiable step. I will bring Sergeant Elena Reyes from the Boston Police Department, I responded, naming a trusted veteran officer I'd known professionally for over 20 years. An added layer of security. Any meeting of this magnitude must have unimpeachable witnesses and absolute transparency. Agreed, came Isabel's curt, immediate reply. Thank you. I quickly placed the call to Sergeant Reyes, who, recognizing the gravity of the situation and my palpable desperation, agreed to accompany me without a moment's hesitation. We decided on a meeting location, a brightly lit 24-hour diner located precisely halfway between the Vance estate and the police station's central precinct. It was perfectly neutral ground, a public space teeming with the noise and bustle of late-night life, full of countless anonymous witnesses and, most importantly, continuously monitored by high-definition security cameras. No traps could be sprung here without immediate, undeniable consequences. As I prepared to leave my quiet suburban home, I paused, my hand hovering near Aurora's bedroom door. I listened intently to her steady, rhythmic breathing. For the first time in what felt like eons, she had managed to fall into a deep, peaceful sleep. The crushing weight of years spent under the immense psychological control of the Vance dynasty seemed temporarily lifted, suspended in the blessed relief of unconsciousness. I made the difficult, strategic choice not to wake her. If the information Isabel held proved to be genuine, a genuine path to salvation, I would wait. Share it with Aurora when she awoke in the relative safety of the morning light, when she was lucid and ready to fight. If, however, this proved to be a final desperate maneuver, a venomous trap laid by the crumbling Vance family to neutralize me, I would face it alone. There was no justifiable reason, absolutely none, to subject my precious daughter to another moment of undue stress or emotional danger. Whatever the contents of the secret Isabel Vance wanted to unload upon me in these final, tense hours before her own family's meticulously constructed, generations-old facade shattered into a million pieces, I would receive it with extreme caution. My strategy was clear. Listen critically, act strategically, and prioritize Aurora's absolute, unquestionable protection above all else. The power dynamic, I realized with a sudden electrifying jolt, had fundamentally and irreversibly shifted. We, the long-suffering victims, were no longer merely reacting to the maneuvers and manipulative tactics of the Vance dynasty. We were now dictating the terms of engagement. And in the dead of this frozen night, against all odds, it seemed that at least one unexpected member of the fiercely loyal Vance inner circle was finally, definitively, breaking ranks. My heart hammered a desperate rhythm against my ribs, a percussion of fear and hope playing out in the fluorescent glow of the diner. The clock above the service counter read 11:15 p.m., relentlessly ticking down the minutes until Leo Maxwell's financial report dropped online. Every passing minute felt like a handful of wet sand slipping through my fingers. Sergeant Reyes, a woman whose face was a map of 20 years spent navigating the brutal realities of Boston's streets, sat opposite me. Her silence was not indifference. It was the coiled, patient energy of a true guardian. Her presence was my single greatest comfort, a solid, undeniable shield against the unknown. Eleanor, the sergeant finally spoke, her voice a low, steady rumble. I've gone over the background on Isabel Vance. She's the youngest. 29, the one they consistently overlooked. A brilliant art historian, but they forced her into managing the family's nonprofit foundation, the one that's rumored to be nothing more than a giant tax shelter. She's financially dependent, but socially, she's always been the family's emotional outlier. They never quite crushed her spirit the way they did Aurora's. I nodded slowly, absorbing the crucial tactical assessment. An outlier. That's why she's talking. She's not trying to save her brother Marcus. She's trying to save herself from the inevitable wreckage. Or perhaps, I whispered, allowing a sliver of genuine deep-seated hope to emerge. She has a shred of conscience left. A moral compass still spinning. Conscience is a fickle friend when billions of dollars are involved. Eleanor, Sergeant Reyes warned, her gaze sharp, unwavering. Assume the worst and you won't be surprised. Assume this is a calculated move to mitigate her own criminal exposure. We're here for one person, Aurora. A sudden blast of frigid, howling wind swept into the diner as the glass door swung open. A figure stood silhouetted against the swirling white chaos outside, momentarily freezing the late-night chatter of the other patrons. It was Isabel Vance. She was dressed in an expensive, dark wool coat, but her normally flawless, high-society composure was severely cracked. Her eyes, wide and unnaturally bright in the harsh light, darted nervously around the room, settling on the sight of Sergeant Reyes's uniform with a visible, nervous flinch. The young heiress, the ghost in the diner booth, had arrived. Isabel slid onto the bench seat opposite me, carefully avoiding the sergeant's steady, direct gaze. She didn't order coffee. She didn't remove her coat. She simply leaned forward, her voice a low, urgent rasp, barely audible over the crackling static of the old jukebox. I only have 20 minutes, Eleanor. Marcus has secured the entire estate. All digital communications are being monitored. I used a drop phone that will be destroyed after this conversation. I am taking an astronomical risk being here. This is not about my brother or the family's pathetic, crumbling legacy. This is about Aurora. She is in genuine, tangible peril. My heart constricted violently. Peril? What kind of peril? I need specifics, Isabel. Don't waste my precious time with vague threats. Tell me exactly what I need to know. Isabel took a shallow, shaky breath, her gaze finally meeting mine, and in her eyes, I saw not the entitlement of the Vance dynasty, but the raw, terrified vulnerability of a 29-year-old woman cornered by her own kin. When Leo Maxwell's exposé hits at the top of the next hour, it won't just expose the financial corruption. It will expose Marcus's manipulation of the family's overseas assets, specifically the shell corporations used to acquire the controlling stake in Aurora's former media company, the one she was so fiercely devoted to. The revelation hit me like a physical blow, a stunning, brutal betrayal that dwarfed all the smaller hurts. He didn't just pressure her to quit, I whispered, the air leaving my lungs. He engineered the entire corporate takeover. He silenced her. He bought her silence and her submission. Worse, Isabel continued, her voice now barely a thread, Aurora was doing her own quiet deep-dive research into the Vance Foundation's finances for the annual report, unknowingly confirming the exact details Leo Maxwell has. She stumbled upon the digital ledger 3 weeks ago. Marcus found out 2 days later. He has taken her laptop, her journals, everything. He knows she knows. And now the family believes she is a genuine, undeniable liability. An active risk. I felt a cold, crushing weight descend upon me. The subdued, quiet despair I had witnessed in my daughter was not merely the symptom of psychological abuse. It was the silent terror of a woman who possessed a devastating secret about her own captor. Sergeant Reyes, who had been listening with surgical precision, finally intervened, her voice cutting through the tension like a razor. Where is the ledger now, Isabel? We need a hard copy or an accessible digital backup. It's not here. But I know where the family keeps its most sensitive, most incriminating physical documents. The paper trail that links the offshore accounts to the domestic funds. They've converted the old conservatory on the West Wing into a high-security document room, hidden behind a false bookcase. It's a relic of the previous generation. No digital footprint, no direct link to the modern security system. Marcus is there now, overseeing the last-minute shredding of the most sensitive items. He won't leave that room until the report drops. And Aurora? I demanded, the memory of her sleeping face flashing behind my eyes. Tell me exactly where my daughter is right now. Isabel shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my desperate gaze. He's moved her out of the main house. She's in the old boathouse, the one at the edge of the lake. It's unheated, isolated, and Marcus's personal guard, Silas, is stationed outside. It's an intimidation tactic, a psychological prison to keep her completely silent until the initial fallout passes. I saw her only 1 hour ago. She was awake, wrapped in a thin blanket, staring out at the frozen lake. She was not shivering from the cold, Eleanor. She was shivering from the sheer absolute terror, A mother's blood runs cold at such a description. My composure, my carefully cultivated poise, threatened to shatter. But I forced myself to breathe, to remember the goal. Sergeant Reyes, the conservatory. If we can get in there before the report drops, before Marcus destroys the physical evidence, we have proof of the crime, leverage against the entire family, and the power to save Aurora. Sergeant Reyes looked at the time. 11:25 p.m. A warrant would take hours. We have minutes, Eleanor. This is an immediate action situation. We can't go in with force, not without risking Aurora's safety or the loss of the physical evidence. We need a distraction. A highly visible, non-lethal, high-impact distraction. Isabel's eyes widened, a flicker of intelligence returning. The annual New Year's fireworks display. The one they insist on having at midnight, despite the blizzard. It's staged on the eastern lawn, completely opposite the conservatory on the west wing. Everyone, the staff, the remaining guests, the private security detail, will be gathered on the east side of the mansion, facing the lake, to watch the spectacle and toast the new year. I saw the opportunity, a narrow, treacherous window of chance carved out by chaos and pride, a 20-minute window of pure orchestrated chaos, I calculated aloud. The moment the first firework explodes, all attention will be focused away from the boathouse and the conservatory. We have less than 30 minutes to get into position. Isabel stood up abruptly, her mission completed. I've told you what I know. The key to the boathouse is hidden in the stone planter outside the main kitchen door, under the third cobblestone from the right. And the code for the conservatory's hidden safe is 5931. I swear on my life that's all I can give you. I have to disappear now. With one last, terrified glance at Sergeant Reyes, she vanished out the door, swallowed instantly by the relentless, blinding snow. The silence she left behind was deafening. My gaze met Sergeant Reyes's. Her expression was now a mask of pure, focused determination. Eleanor, she said, rising from the booth, her hand resting near her holstered weapon. We are no longer on neutral ground. We are going to war. You are going to get your daughter back. I am going to get the evidence. And Marcus Vance is going to spend his New Year's Eve behind bars. The atmosphere inside the car was thick, heavy with the adrenaline of a mission now irreversibly set in motion. Sergeant Reyes, her professional composure fully engaged, was speaking in urgent, clipped tones into her radio, her voice barely audible, over the relentless drumming of the windshield wipers fighting the blizzard. She was coordinating a discreet perimeter team, an invisible safety net woven around the Vance estate. No sirens, no lights. Keep them in unmarked units, and they are to maintain absolute covert status until I give the explicit command, she commanded. This is a domestic situation with a high-profile target and potential evidence destruction. The priority is the safety of the victim, Aurora Vance. I repeat, the victim's safety is paramount. Do not move in until the fireworks commence. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers ached, channeling my immense fear into the physical act of driving. The Vance estate, known locally as the Fortress, was only 10 minutes away, and the clock was ticking down to the final, terrifying moment, 11:58 p.m., the moment the first firework would explode, giving us a precisely measured 20-minute window of chaos. My mind raced, replaying every painful detail Isabel had provided. The image of Aurora, my courageous daughter, alone in a freezing, isolated boathouse, shaking not from the cold but from terror, was a searing wound in my heart. I mentally reviewed the layout of the sprawling estate, information I had obsessively memorized during my increasingly rare, restricted visits over the past 5 years. The mansion was a labyrinth of arrogance. The main house, the eastern lawn. For the spectacles, the old conservatory on the west wing, and the isolated boathouse down by the frozen lake. Sergeant, I said, my voice tight with strain, we have to split the mission. The moment the fireworks start, the attention will be on the eastern sky. Marcus will be glued to his shredder in the conservatory on the west wing. Silas, his personal guard, will be by the boathouse. We can't possibly secure both at once. I'm aware, Eleanor. That's why we're a team of 2, operating under extreme duress, she stated matter-of-factly. "You know that house intimately, far better than any floor plan could reveal. You are the only one who can navigate that place instantly, emotionally, without hesitation. Your target is Aurora. Mine is the paper trail. We meet back at the car in 20 minutes, no matter what happens. Understood? If either of us is compromised, the other drives straight to the precinct and brings the full force back." I nodded, the gravity of her trust settling upon me. She was entrusting the single most important, high-risk part of the operation, the retrieval of the victim, to a civilian, a desperate mother. But she knew. A mother's desperation is a more potent weapon than any bullet. The towering wrought iron gates of the Vance estate came into view, their crest, a snarling lion, mocking my anxiety. They were, predictably, locked tight. Sergeant Reyes pulled a small, sleek electronic device from her kit. "The Vances use a legacy system for their perimeter security, relying on spectacle, not technology," she muttered, fingers flying across the device. After a tense 30 seconds, the heavy gates groaned, then slowly began to slide open, exposing the long, winding drive leading up to the brilliantly lit mansion. "They believe their reputation is their security," Reyes said, driving through. "Tonight, that arrogance is their downfall." We pulled the car off the main drive, deep into a cluster of thick, snow-laden pine trees, 100 yards from the mansion's main entrance. The car was immediately swallowed by the shadows and the swirling snow. The air outside was absolutely brutal, the temperature well below freezing, the wind a howling banshee. We exited the car, pulling our thick, dark coats tighter. The digital clock on the dashboard now read 11:39 p.m. We had less than 20 minutes before the planned spectacle. Sergeant Reyes pointed toward the eastern lawn. "I see a small cluster of figures gathering near the lake's edge, setting up the fireworks. That's where the main security is focused. We head west." Our boots crunched softly on the pristine snow, every sound amplified in the vast silence of the estate grounds. We moved with the trained caution of predators, hugging the shadows of the mansion's towering walls. The scent of pine and burning wood was faint, a ghostly reminder of the warmth and celebration happening within the main building, a cruel counterpoint to Aurora's agonizing confinement. We reached the back entrance near the main kitchen. My heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird. I remembered Isabel's frantic, whispered instructions. "The key to the boathouse is hidden in the stone planter outside the main kitchen door, under the third cobblestone from the right." I dropped to my knees, heedless of the freezing cold seeping through my trousers. My gloved fingers, now clumsy with adrenaline, scrabbled at the thick, icy snow covering the planter. First cobblestone, second, third. I located the cold, rough surface of the third stone and levered it up with a desperate groan. Beneath it, nestled in the frozen earth, was a single tarnished brass key, a primitive, heavy object that felt like the weight of my daughter's destiny in my palm. The key to the cage. "Got it," I whispered, rising quickly, tucking the key into the inner pocket of my coat. Sergeant Reyes was already at the heavy oak service door leading to the west wing, the side that housed the ancient, now repurposed conservatory. Using a tiny, specialized lock-picking tool, she worked with a focused, silent intensity that was mesmerizing. After what felt like an eternity, but was only about 60 seconds, the lock clicked open with a soft, decisive thwack. "Go, Eleanor. The boathouse is yours. I'll secure the evidence. Remember the code, 5931. Be safe." "Elena," I replied, my voice thick with emotion, using her first name as a prayer. She gave a quick, reassuring nod, then slipped inside, disappearing into the dark maw of the mansion. I turned my back to the deceitful warmth and sprinted across the immaculate, snow-covered lawn toward the frozen lake, the chilling wind tearing at my face. I was now alone, a 50-something mother running across the estate of one of the world's most powerful families, armed only with a vintage brass key and an unstoppable, ferocious love. My target was the small, isolated, lightless structure, At the edge of the water, the boathouse, my daughter's prison. I had approximately 12 minutes left before the midnight fireworks display would erupt, creating the much-needed diversion. But I knew Marcus would have calculated his movements too. If I was late, if I failed to reach Aurora before he realized, the danger, my child would pay the ultimate devastating price. The snow, falling heavier now, felt like a silent, crushing accomplice to the Vance dynasty's cruelty. Every muscle in my body screamed in protest, but the image of my beautiful, broken Aurora propelled me forward, faster than I had ever run in my life. The ice had cracked. Now the mother must move. The boathouse was a structure of sheer, stark misery, sitting right on the frozen edge of the lake, whipped mercilessly by the high wind coming off the vast, icy water. Its dark, unpainted wooden exterior looked ancient, forgotten, a physical manifestation of the Vance family's callous disregard for anything that didn't serve their direct purpose. And there he was. Silas, Marcus Vance's hulking, mountainous personal security guard, a man whose reputation for ruthless efficiency preceded him. Silas stood near the single reinforced door, a sentinel in the storm. He was immense, a fortress of muscle in a heavy military-grade parka. Even from a distance of 50 yards, I could see the glow of a small electric heater he had positioned outside the boathouse door, a chilling testament to the utter cruelty of leaving my daughter to freeze inside. He was leaning against the wall, his head bowed slightly, clearly attempting to escape the worst of the brutal wind, a position of slight, almost lazy inattentiveness. I immediately stopped, melting back into the shadow of a large, gnarled willow tree whose branches, dusted heavily with snow, provided a welcome screen. My lungs were burning, my legs screaming in protest from the unexpected frantic sprint. I checked the time on my phone. 11:47 p.m. Only 11 minutes until the celebratory fireworks were scheduled to ignite the eastern sky. I knew I couldn't face Silas head-on. Not only was he easily 3 times my weight and half my age, but he was also undoubtedly armed. This was not a fight I could win with physical force. This had to be a battle of wit, a distraction born of desperation and the sheer, unexpected nature of my presence. I took a series of slow, agonizingly deep breaths, attempting to settle the frantic pounding in my chest. I scanned the area. The only nearby features were the towering willow tree, a stack of old, waterlogged wooden crates used for storage near the back wall of the boathouse, and the vast, empty expanse of the frozen lake. My gaze settled on the crates. They were stacked nearly 6 feet high, unstable, leaning at a perilous angle against the rear wall of the structure. They presented a perfect opportunity. I quietly, meticulously began to circle around the boathouse, moving with the practiced stealth of someone who has spent a lifetime avoiding unnecessary confrontations. The sound of the wind, howling its mournful song across the ice, was my ally, perfectly masking the sound of my slow, calculated movements in the deep snow. I reached the crates. They smelled faintly of mildew and brine. I carefully tested the bottom crate, exerting the absolute minimum pressure necessary. It was heavy, but mercifully, the entire unstable stack rested on a patch of uneven, icy ground. The goal was not to move them completely, but to nudge them just enough to send the towering pile crashing down in a sudden, violent avalanche of wood and noise. I braced myself. My shoulder pressed against the cold, rough wood, and put all my remaining strength into a single sharp shove. It worked perfectly. With a groaning, splintering crack that seemed deafening in the otherwise serene landscape, the entire stack of 6-foot-tall crates came crashing down. The impact was phenomenal, a sound like a single massive thunderclap, followed by the clatter and smash of old wood striking the icy ground. Silas reacted instantly. He roared, a guttural sound of surprise and aggression, and spun away from the boathouse door, his hand instinctively going to the weapon holstered on his hip. He moved quickly, his huge frame scrambling toward the source of the sudden, massive disruption. He was focused entirely on the back of the boathouse, where the crates lay scattered like fallen dominoes. Now, this was my only window. I sprinted from the shadow of the willow tree, low to the ground, moving with a speed that defied my 50-something years and my aching joints. I reached the boathouse door in mere seconds, pulling the tarnished brass key from my coat pocket. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely manage to insert the key into the stiff, cold lock. "Please, dear God, work!" The lock turned with a rusty, protesting click. Just as I pulled the key out, I heard Silas's roar of confused frustration from the back of the structure. He had realized the noise was merely a distraction, a setup. He was already turning back, his powerful legs driving him back toward his post. I yanked the boathouse door open and stumbled inside, slamming the heavy wooden door shut behind me. I turned the lock with a desperate final twist. The air inside was stale, dense, and piercingly cold, an environment designed to wear down the human spirit. The only light came from a single, high window near the rafters, illuminating the small interior with a meager, pale glow that revealed the shape of my daughter. Aurora was huddled on a thin cot in the corner, a cheap, tattered wool blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Her knees were drawn up to her chest. Her eyes, usually so sharp and full of life, were wide, vacant pools of fear, fixed on the closed door. But when she saw me, her mother, standing there, a figure of flesh and blood in her freezing prison, a small, fragile sound, half sob, half cry, escaped her lips. "Mom?" she whispered, her voice barely a breath, rough with disuse and cold. "Mom, is that really you?" I crossed the small, cramped room in 3 quick strides and dropped to my knees beside her cot. I threw my arms around her, squeezing her tightly against my own body, trying to transfer every ounce of my warmth, my strength, my entire being into her frail, shaking frame. The scent of her hair, faintly metallic, not the clean, familiar scent of her favorite shampoo, was devastatingly painful. "Yes, my darling. It's me. I'm here. You are safe. I'm getting you out. We are leaving right now," I choked out, tears finally streaming down my face, freezing instantly on my cheeks. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, burying her face into my shoulder, clinging to me with a fierce, desperate strength. "He knows, Mom. Marcus knows I have the ledger details. He said he would let them find me, let them think I ran away, let the scandal crush me completely if I ever tried to talk to you." Suddenly, a violent, powerful thump rocked the solid wooden door. Silas was outside, furiously rattling the handle, his deep voice muffled but laced with murderous intent. "Open this door now! You can't be in there! Marcus is going to kill you for this, old woman." I ignored him, tightening my grip on my daughter. "He's bluffing, Aurora. We have 10 minutes until the biggest distraction of the night. Get up. Now. We have to go." I pulled her up gently, supporting her weakened body. The clock was running out. I had my daughter, but the most dangerous part of the mission, the escape, was just beginning. I could hear Silas now, his immense weight slamming against the door again and again. The old wood was groaning ominously. The door wouldn't hold much longer. The first firework burst high above the eastern lawn, a spectacular, deafening crackle of emerald green and silver. It was a beautiful, terrifying sound, the signal for our precarious, high-stakes escape. The brilliant light momentarily filtered through the high window, illuminating the desperate urgency in Aurora's eyes. "The door won't hold, Mom," she gasped, her voice slightly stronger now, the shock beginning to give way to survival instinct. "That blast was Silas. He's trying to break the frame. He has a key. He just wants to smash it open to make an example of us." I pulled her toward the rear of the boathouse, away from the inevitable, imminent confrontation. "We're not leaving the way we came, darling. I have a different plan." The boathouse, I recalled from years ago, had a second, smaller door, a service hatch used for launching canoes, leading directly onto a narrow, wooden dock that stretched out over the frozen lake. The rear wall was lined with dusty old oars and life vests. I located the smaller hatch door, hidden behind a stack of unused fishing nets. It was secured by a single heavy bolt latch. My frozen fingers fumbled with the cold metal, but the pure adrenaline coursing through my veins gave me the necessary power. With a loud protesting clank, the latch slid back. "Get ready, Aurora. We're going out the back, straight onto the ice. We need to move fast before they secure the entire perimeter." The service hatch swung open, revealing the narrow wooden planks of the dock and the vast, flat expanse of the frozen lake stretching out into the darkness. The wind hit us with full force, a brutal, bone-chilling slap that stole our breath. The ice was thick. It had been a bitterly cold winter, but it was smooth, treacherous, and offered absolutely no cover. The lake, Mom? It's too exposed. They'll see us instantly once they realize we're gone. Aurora cried out, her eyes darting nervously toward the main mansion, where the fireworks continued to erupt in blinding, multicolored explosions. They're all looking up, darling. They're focused on the spectacle, the glamour. They're celebrating their own arrogance, I said, forcing a calm I didn't feel into my voice. We're relying on the fact that they never look down, never look at the things they consider beneath them. The dock is too narrow. The fastest, safest path is straight across the ice to the opposite wild shoreline. It's less than 300 yards, and it leads directly into the public nature reserve, where we can disappear. A tremendous, splintering crack echoed from the front of the boathouse. The main door had given way. Silas was inside. He's in. Go, Aurora, go! I shoved her gently but firmly onto the dock, then followed immediately. We stumbled onto the glassy surface of the frozen lake. The ice was slick and incredibly difficult to navigate, especially for Aurora, whose legs were weak from fear and cold. I grabbed her arm, hooking it tightly through mine, and we began to move, slipping and sliding in a desperate, frantic scramble across the dark, reflective surface. There! They're on the ice! Silas's guttural voice carried clearly across the frozen expanse, even over the constant, booming reports of the fireworks. He was out on the dock, a huge, dark shape, momentarily outlined by a cascade of glittering gold sparks exploding high above the mansion. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. Run, Aurora! Don't look up, don't look back, just focus on the opposite shore. We moved in a clumsy, terrified rhythm, our feet scrabbling for purchase on the ice. The fireworks provided brilliant, momentary illumination, then plunged us back into deep shadow, only to repeat the cycle seconds later. It was disorienting, terrifying, and utterly exposed. Then, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold, the sharp, clear crack of a gunshot, followed by the terrifying whiz of a bullet ricocheting off the ice 50 yards to our left. Silas was firing a warning shot, aiming to force us to stop. He's using a tranquilizer rifle, Aurora cried out, a sudden, panicked realization dawning in her voice. He has one in his kit. He won't use live ammo near the mansion, but he'll use the tranquilizer to disable us. We can't stop, Mom. We have to keep moving. I pulled her harder, my old legs pumping with a strength I didn't know I possessed. We were perhaps 200 yards from the safety of the reserve's shoreline. The ground was slightly elevated there, offering natural cover in the dense pine forest. Another shot rang out, closer this time, and I felt a chilling swoosh of air near my right ear. The next dart would find its mark. Just as my strength was beginning to fail, just as I felt my right foot slip irrevocably on the treacherous ice, a tremendous, shattering noise erupted on the opposite side of the estate, the west wing. It was not a firework. It was the sound of something immense, something structural giving way. An alarm, a high-pitched, piercing shriek, immediately began to wail from the direction of the mansion. The high-pitched wail was unmistakable, the main, high-security alarm. That's Sergeant Reyes. I screamed over the wind and the fireworks. She's secured the evidence. She's triggered the alarm. It's the distraction we needed. The immediate sudden change in the atmosphere was palpable. The focus of the security team, who had been lazily enjoying the spectacle on the eastern lawn, instantly shifted. Shouts erupted from the mansion. The constant booming reports of the fireworks, which had been our cover, began to slow and sputter, abruptly abandoned by the staff who were now running toward the source of the main alarm, the west wing, the conservatory. Silas, who was still trying to gain better footing on the slippery ice, hesitated for a crucial, life-saving second, his massive head turning toward the sound of the main security breach. His orders were absolute: protect Marcus Vance and the family's assets. Aurora, now a known but isolated threat, suddenly became secondary to the main, systemic failure of the house's security. They're going for the conservatory, Aurora whispered, realization dawning in her eyes. They think you were a diversion for the evidence. They're leaving us. Keep running, my darling. They underestimated a mother's resolve, and they underestimated Sergeant Reyes's skill, I said, adrenaline lending a painful final burst of speed. We hit the opposite shoreline, stumbling and falling into the soft, deep, blessed snow near the tree line. We were safe from Silas, safe from the ice, safe from the immediate threat. I dragged Aurora behind the enormous sheltering trunk of a 100-year-old oak tree. We collapsed together, panting, the frozen earth cold beneath us, but we were free. The sound of the abandoned fireworks display finally sputtered out entirely, leaving only the ominous, piercing wail of the security alarm and the faint, urgent shouts of security personnel rushing toward the west wing. In the sudden quiet, I held my child, who was sobbing uncontrollably now, sobbing not from fear, but from the immense, shattering relief of liberation. The intense wail of the Vance security alarm was now a faint, haunting sound, a retreating echo of the prison we had just escaped. We were deep inside the sprawling, unmarked nature reserve, a vast sanctuary of frozen pines and untouched wilderness that bordered the Vance estate. The cold was a physical, agonizing presence, but the sensation of Aurora's shaking body pressed against mine was all that mattered. We're safe now, my sweet girl. Completely safe, I murmured, stroking her snow-dusted hair. Her initial sobs had subsided into deep, shuddering breaths. She was weak, emotionally and physically drained. But the light, the vibrant spark I had feared was extinguished forever, was slowly, miraculously, beginning to rekindle in her eyes. She looked up at me, her expression a mix of deep gratitude and immense pain. I didn't think you would ever come. Marcus, he was so absolute. He made me believe you had moved on, that you had finally accepted the distance. He intercepted everything, every letter, every card, every birthday gift. The cruelty of that psychological warfare was a fresh wave of agony. Never, Aurora. I have lived for nothing but you since the day you were born. I never, for a single solitary second, stopped fighting for you. He didn't steal your voice, darling. He stole the pathway to mine. I adjusted the thin wool blanket I'd managed to throw over her shoulders, the blanket from the boathouse, a pathetic trophy of her captivity. I checked my phone. 12:10 a.m. Leo Maxwell's exposé was now live. The Vance dynasty was, at this very moment, hemorrhaging its reputation across the globe. Marcus has no idea the world is ending for him right now, I whispered, a dark satisfaction curling in my gut. He's likely still in the conservatory, panicking over the evidence Sergeant Reyes secured. The conservatory, Aurora repeated, her mind, the formidable investigative journalist's mind, clicking back into gear. That's where he stored the physical ledgers. I saw a tiny, almost invisible digital copy on an encrypted drive on his desktop 3 weeks ago. It was the key to everything, the shell corporations, the tax fraud, the corporate takeover of my old media firm. He bought my career just to silence me. The sheer arrogance of it still burns. Sergeant Reyes has the paper proof now, my love. She is at this very moment securing it for the district attorney, I assured her. But tell me exactly what you saw on that digital ledger. We need to be prepared for the legal battle that is coming. With a tremendous effort of will, Aurora pushed past her exhaustion and the emotional trauma. The journalist took over, the reporter in her mind rising to the surface, refusing to be silenced. She began to speak, her voice low and steady, detailing the labyrinthine, multi-layered financial deception of the Vance dynasty. The foundation wasn't just a tax shelter. Mom, it was a money laundering operation. They were funneling massive overseas profits. We're talking billions of dollars. From a mining operation in South America with highly questionable environmental and labor practices. They used the foundation's high-profile charity events to mask the transactions. I saw wire transfers labeled disaster relief that went directly into offshore accounts controlled by Marcus's personal trust. It wasn't just unethical, it was absolutely criminal. I estimated the total fraud to be around $4.5 billion over 7 years. The scale of the crime was breathtaking. dwarfing the simple domestic abuse. My daughter hadn't just stumbled upon a family secret. She had discovered an international financial conspiracy of extraordinary magnitude. When Marcus realized what I knew, she continued, her voice trembling again. He didn't threaten me physically. He threatened my mind. He told me that if I ever spoke a word, he would have me legally declared incompetent, a victim of post-traumatic depression resulting from my stressful journalism career. He said he would use the family's vast legal network to ensure I lost my autonomy, my name, my very identity. That's why I was so silent. Mom, I was fighting for my sanity, my identity, knowing I had this colossal truth inside me, unable to share it. I held her tighter, the tears returning. This time tears of profound, agonizing empathy. The threat against her mind, the source of her brilliant independence, was the most malicious form of control Marcus Vance could have devised. He is a monster, my sweet child. But his reign ends tonight, I said, kissing the top of her cold head. And your silence ends here in this freezing forest. Your truth is now a weapon, a shield. You hold the key to bringing down an empire, and no court in the land will ever declare you incompetent. They will call you a hero, a whistleblower, a fearless journalist. A sudden noise, the distant sound of a single powerful engine, interrupted our moment of profound connection. It was not the sound of a police cruiser. It was the low, persistent rumble of a heavy-duty off-road vehicle. They're sweeping the perimeter, I realized, a fresh wave of panic washing over me. They've realized we didn't return to the car, and they're coming into the reserve. We have to move deeper off the beaten track. I helped Aurora to her feet. Every muscle screamed in protest, but the threat of recapture was a powerful, galvanizing force. We began to move deeper into the dark, silent forest, walking not with fear, but with a newfound, steely resolve. The cold air filled my lungs, and with every step I took, I felt the shackles falling away from my daughter's spirit. We were survivors now, refugees in the night, but we were together, and we were armed with the truth. The journey was not yet over, but the darkest part, the prison of the soul, was firmly behind us. I promised myself I would not stop until Aurora was not only safe, but entirely vindicated. The Vance dynasty would not only fall, but it would fall at the hands of the very woman it had attempted to silence forever. The cold reality of liberation was harsh, but it was also the first breath of freedom. The grueling trek through the frozen wilderness had been a necessary baptism. Every stumbling step through the deep snow, every gasp of pain from Aurora, was a physical severing of the chains that had bound her. We finally stumbled onto a narrow, snow-cleared service road that led to the highway, miles away from the Vance estate's immediate surveillance. My watch now read 1:15 a.m. The first chaotic wave of the fallout from Leo Maxwell's exposé would be fully underway. A blinding firestorm of breaking news, my burner phone, which I had kept in silent, deep pocket mode, began to vibrate insistently. It was a prearranged encrypted call from Sergeant Reyes. "Eleanor, are you safe? Do you have Aurora?" Sergeant Reyes's voice was crisp, professional, but laced with an undeniable edge of relief. "We are safe, Elena." We made it to the service road on the far side of the reserve. Aurora is with me, exhausted but unharmed. "We're moving toward the interstate," I confirmed, pulling my daughter close to my side. "Thank God. Listen to me. The mission was successful." "I have the evidence," she reported, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "I found the conservatory." The safe was exactly where Isabel said it would be. The code 5931 worked perfectly. I have 4 years of ledgers detailing the offshore wire transfers, signed personally by Marcus Vance. He was there, Eleanor. He was caught red-handed, shredding the last fiscal year's documents. When the alarm went off, he was stunned. My perimeter team secured him immediately. Marcus Vance is currently in custody, booked on suspicion of obstruction of justice and financial fraud. The DA is already mobilizing. A wave of dizzying relief washed over me, so intense it almost buckled my knees. "You did it, Elena. You saved us all." "We did it, Eleanor. You showed a ferocious courage tonight that warrants a medal. Now listen closely. We need to secure Aurora's testimony immediately. before the Vance legal machine begins its campaign of character assassination. Their entire strategy will now be to undermine her credibility. They will attack her sanity, her professional history, exactly as Marcus threatened. He threatened to have her declared incompetent, I explained, my voice tight with lingering anger. He said she suffered from post-traumatic depression from her career. Exactly. We will use that against them. We need a safe house, a place where she can rest, recover, and deliver a formal statement that will be unimpeachable, Sergeant Reyes said, the sound of static momentarily interrupting her words. I'm sending you the coordinates now. It's a secure police-monitored facility, completely off the grid. Drive to the highway, and you will see a nondescript vehicle flashing its lights 3 times. That's your escort. They will take you there. Do not speak to anyone else. Do not use your own phones. I saw the new message pop up on the burner phone, a precise set of coordinates and a coded instruction. Understood, Elena. We're moving now. Thank you for everything. I ended the call and tucked the phone securely away. I looked at Aurora. Her face was pale, but her eyes held a clarity that had been missing for years. The news that Marcus was in custody, that the physical evidence was secured, had been a powerful tonic. We're going to a safe house, my love, I explained softly. The police are waiting for us. You are going to give your statement, and you are going to reclaim your voice, your career, your truth. Tonight, your future begins again. Aurora took a deep, steady breath, the cold air seeming to steel her resolve. The moment I saw those numbers in the ledger, Mom, I knew I couldn't let them win. The arrogance of believing they could buy off a journalist, that they could buy me, was intolerable. They will try to destroy me, but I have the facts. And I have you. She paused, a small, genuine smile touching her lips for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. I am ready, Mom. Let's go put this monster away. We walked the final short distance to the highway. The snow had lessened considerably, now a soft, gentle flurry. The lights of the distant highway were a beacon of civilization, of the justice system we were about to engage. As we reached the shoulder of the highway, a black, unassuming sedan appeared on the road. It passed us, paused, and the headlights flashed a quick, deliberate pattern. Flash, flash, flash. Our ride. We approached the vehicle, and the back door opened silently. A plainclothes officer, a young, serious woman with kind eyes, greeted us. Eleanor, Aurora, please get in. We're taking you to Sanctuary. I helped my daughter into the warm, secure comfort of the back seat. As I climbed in after her, I looked back at the vast, silent wilderness we had just traversed. The frozen lake, the dense, dark trees, the distant, faint sound of the retreating alarm. It was the physical space of my greatest fear and my most profound triumph. We were leaving the Vance dynasty behind, not as defeated victims, but as victorious survivors, carrying the unassailable truth that would ultimately shatter their legacy. The sanctuary we were heading toward was not just a physical location. It was the sanctuary of Aurora's recovered integrity, the uncompromised truth she was about to unleash upon the world. The story of her captivity was over. The story of her ultimate vindication was just about to begin. The secure facility was a cocoon of safety, a sterile, quiet sanctuary that felt 1,000,000 miles away from the chaos of the snowy night. After a much-needed 3 hours of fitful, exhausted sleep, a hot shower, and a small, nourishing meal, Aurora was finally ready. She sat at the large conference table, flanked by her mother, myself, and a team of prosecuting attorneys and federal investigators, all mobilized and operating on pure adrenaline and the immense weight of the evidence secured by Sergeant Reyes. The lead prosecutor, Mr. Douglas Reed, a man known for his unflinching pursuit of white-collar crime, leaned forward, his expression solemn but encouraging. Aurora, thank you for your courage. Marcus Vance is being held without bail. The physical ledgers are being cross-referenced with Leo Maxwell's online report, and everything matches. What we need now is your personal, detailed testimony, a complete timeline of his psychological manipulation, and, crucially, the moment you discovered the digital ledger. Aurora nodded slowly, taking a deep, steadying breath. Her hands, which had been trembling just an hour earlier, were now resting flat on the table, a sign of her returning composure. The transformation was startling. The trauma was still visible in the shadows under her eyes, but the fire of the fearless journalist had returned, burning brighter than ever before. "I want to give my statement not just to you, but to the world," she stated firmly, her voice clear and resonant, devoid of the hesitation that had plagued her for years. "They tried to silence the journalist in me. I want the record to reflect that the journalist is the one who took down the Vance dynasty." She began her testimony, a chilling, meticulous chronicle of 5 years of incremental psychological abuse. She described how Marcus had subtly isolated her from her professional network, how he had dismissed her friends as poor influences, and how he had gradually eroded her self-confidence until she felt utterly dependent on his approval. She detailed the devastating threat to have her declared incompetent, a calculated strike against the very core of her intellectual identity. "The most important date was December 5th, she narrated, her gaze fixed steadily on a point beyond the wall, reliving the moment. "I was preparing the annual report for the Vance Foundation. My access was high level, and I had the administrative password to Marcus's primary work computer. I wasn't looking for anything nefarious. I was looking for the Foundation's high-level investment portfolio data. I found an obscure, heavily encrypted folder labeled Legacy Projects. I had to use 4 separate password keys I'd pieced together over months from documents he'd carelessly left lying around. When I finally cracked it, I found the digital ledger, a spreadsheet detailing the transfer of $4.5 billion over 7 years, routed through 3 offshore shell companies, all tied to the South American mining operation. The sheer brutality of the environmental damage and the use of near-slave labor at that site, it was shocking. The money wasn't charitable, it was blood money, laundered through the guise of philanthropy." She paused, her voice shaking slightly, but she pushed on. "I immediately downloaded the file onto a tiny unmarked flash drive, one that I kept hidden inside the spine of an old, irrelevant book on the bookshelf. I knew the physical evidence had to exist, but the digital copy was my insurance. Marcus discovered the access breach 2 days later. He confiscated my laptop and my journal, but he never found the small unmarked flash drive." Mr. Reed closed his notebook with a soft snap. "That flash drive, Aurora, is the final crucial piece of evidence. That digital copy will cement our case and preempt any attempt by the Vance defense team to claim the physical ledgers were fabricated." "I have it," I interjected softly, reaching into the inner pocket of my coat. The panic of the night before had caused me to overlook the one small item I had insisted Aurora bring with her when I entered the boathouse. A small, seemingly insignificant book she clutched under her blanket. I had taken it from her upon entering the car and tucked it safely away. I presented the team with the book, an old, worn copy of Wuthering Heights. Aurora's eyes widened in surprise and then filled with a deep, loving understanding. "The flash drive is there inside the glued spine. I never let it go." The room erupted in a quiet, professional flurry of activity. The digital evidence was now secure. The legal team had everything they needed. Aurora had provided the emotional context, the motive, and the absolute verification of the crime. As the team began to prepare the final affidavits, I pulled my chair closer to my daughter. "You are the strongest woman I know, Aurora. You went through absolute hell, but you came out on the other side. Not as a victim, but as a warrior." She leaned her head against my shoulder, finally allowing herself a moment of pure, unguarded exhaustion. "I realized something, Mom, when I was sitting in that frozen boathouse, waiting for Silas to break down the door. The Vance dynasty's power wasn't real. It was based on illusion, on the silent compliance of everyone around them. The moment I chose to speak, the moment I chose truth over my own supposed security, their power evaporated. The real fight isn't against wealth or status. It's against the silence that allows corruption to thrive." Her words resonated deeply. It was a powerful lesson, a testament to her profound recovery. Aurora Vance was gone. In her place sat a woman ready to take on an empire. The safe house was not just a hiding spot. It was the launching pad for her ultimate public act of defiance and justice. The next step would be the unsealing of her testimony and the public presentation of her evidence, a moment that would change the course of global finance and social justice forever. The world outside the secure facility had devolved into a state of stunned, chaotic disbelief. Leo Maxwell's exposé, fueled by the evidence secured by Sergeant Reyes and the imminent threat of Aurora's testimony, had become the single biggest global news story. The Vance dynasty was imploding in a spectacular, unprecedented fashion. Their stock values had plummeted, their foundation was under immediate freeze order, and Marcus Vance was formally charged with multiple counts of fraud and money laundering. My daughter, Aurora, was no longer a victim. She was the most protected, most sought-after woman in the world, the key whistleblower. She was now dressed in a simple, professional charcoal gray suit, her makeup minimal, her eyes clear and unwavering. She was preparing to give her formal video testimony, which would be released simultaneously to the Department of Justice and to every major news outlet in the country. This was her moment of absolute public vindication. Mr. Reed, the lead prosecutor, gave her a final nod of encouragement. This broadcast, Aurora, will be the end of the Vance name as we know it. We need you to be the journalist you are, factual, compelling, and absolutely emotionally honest. No theatrics. The truth itself is the drama. She took her seat in front of the camera, a minimalist backdrop of a neutral gray wall behind her. I stood just out of the frame, my hand resting protectively on the back of her chair. This was the moment I had dreamt of for 5 years, the moment my daughter reclaimed her voice. The technician gave the 3-second countdown. Aurora began to speak, her voice a calm, measured, yet utterly devastating instrument of truth. "My name is Aurora Sterling," she began, pointedly using her maiden name, a powerful statement of severed ties. 5 years ago, I married Marcus Vance. What I believed was a life of commitment became a life of calculated incremental psychological captivity. I stand here today not as a disgruntled former wife, but as an investigative journalist who stumbled upon a vast criminal enterprise operating under the guise of American philanthropy. She laid out the evidence with surgical precision, using the language of finance and law, never once resorting to melodrama. She presented the facts, the $4.5 billion fraud, the shell corporations, the environmental damage, the use of charity events to mask money laundering. She spoke about the chilling threat to have her declared incompetent, revealing the perverse lengths Marcus went to silence the truth within her own mind. I lived in the shadows for years, holding a secret that was simultaneously suffocating and empowering, she continued, her voice gaining a powerful, resonant tremor. The lesson I learned in my frozen prison is this: arrogance creates blind spots. The Vance dynasty was so absolutely certain that their wealth could buy silence, buy compliance, buy me, that they never once considered the possibility that one quiet woman could hold the key to their destruction. The true power is not in the billions of dollars they stole. The true power is in the single, uncompromised, unbought truth. She finished her statement by addressing her former husband directly, a moment that sent a shiver down my spine. "Marcus, you thought you could crush my mind to protect your criminal empire. You failed. Your empire is gone, and my mind is now clearer, sharper, and more resolved than ever before. Justice is not always bought in a courtroom. Sometimes it is simply spoken into existence by a voice that refused to be silenced." The camera light faded. Silence descended upon the room. The legal team immediately began the process of distributing the file. The world was about to hear every single word. I knelt beside Aurora, pulling her into a fierce, proud embrace. "That was magnificent, my love. It was everything. You are free." She leaned back, her face radiating a newfound peace. "I don't just feel free, Mom. I feel reborn. The 5 years with Marcus were not lost time. They were the most brutal, comprehensive master's course in corporate malfeasance any journalist could ever take. I know how they operate now. I know where the money hides. And I know the arrogance that will always lead to their eventual downfall." Suddenly, the young officer who had driven us to the safe house hurried into the room, her expression tense. Mr. Reed, we just got a coded message from the Vance defense team. They are attempting a Hail Mary play. They are going to claim that Isabel Vance, the woman who provided the tip, was coerced by Aurora into making false claims, and that Aurora's mind is, in fact, unstable, making her testimony unreliable. I clenched my fists. Even in prison, the venom of the Vance dynasty was still circulating. They were trying to discredit the only other witness who could corroborate Aurora's account. Aurora looked at me, a calm, strategic look in her eyes. They are scared. They are resorting to a desperate, predictable tactic. But they don't know what we have. I remembered the key piece of information Isabel had given me, something I had saved for just such an eventuality. Aurora, do you remember what Isabel told me about her own situation? About how they forced her into running the nonprofit foundation? She nodded. She was forced to manage the entire tax shelter operation. She was their outlier, their scapegoat. Exactly. We will counter their claim of coercion with a preemptive, unassailable display of cooperation. We will use Isabel's own words to turn her into an unexpected, powerful co-whistleblower. We will offer her immunity in exchange for her full public cooperation. They tried to pit you against your own family. We will turn one of their own against them. The legal team was galvanized by the proposal. Aurora's testimony was the truth. Isabel's cooperation would be the undeniable, structural confirmation that would crush the Vance defense entirely. The battle for justice was now a strategic chess match, and we were about to deliver the final, devastating checkmate. The immediate aftermath of Aurora's testimony had been an unmitigated global sensation. The world was split between outright fury at the Vance dynasty's breathtaking corruption and deep admiration for the quiet courage of the woman who exposed them. The pressure on the Department of Justice was immense, ensuring the legal process was moving with unprecedented speed. Now it was time to address the final. Critical vulnerability, the lone unexpected ally, Isabel Vance. The Vance legal team had already issued a scathing public statement, claiming that Aurora was unstable and had coerced her troubled sister-in-law Isabel into fabricating the tip. It was a vile, predictable smear campaign designed to muddy the waters of truth. We need to offer Isabel a deal she cannot refuse, Mr. Reed stated, adjusting his tie before the camera. Full immunity from prosecution in exchange for a complete, public, and documented testimony, corroborating Aurora's account and detailing the systemic abuse and coercion she herself suffered within the foundation. She's currently sequestered with her own lawyer, waiting for the smoke to clear. We are offering her a pathway to freedom. The secure video conference blinked to life. On the screen appeared Isabel Vance, looking profoundly different from the terrified young woman I had met in the 24-hour diner. She was pale, drawn, and utterly exhausted, seated next to a stern-faced, high-priced defense attorney. Ms. Vance, Mr. Reed began, his tone professional and unwavering. We have your brother Marcus in custody, the physical ledgers, and Aurora's irrefutable testimony. The case against the Vance dynasty is airtight. Your family's defense is attempting to publicly label you as mentally unstable and coerced. We are offering you a one-time opportunity. Full immunity regarding your involvement in the Foundation's operations, in exchange for a full public debriefing on the Vance's method of control and a complete, notarized corroboration of Aurora's discovery of the ledger. Isabel's defense attorney immediately interjected, his voice sharp and dismissive. My client has already made a statement to the authorities. She provided a tip, and she will stand by that tip. We reject your offer of immunity. Any further statement would compromise her standing with the Vance family's assets, to which she is still a beneficiary. It was the oldest trick in the book. Maintain silence. Protect the wealth. Hope the family will protect her later. Aurora leaned forward, her eyes locked with Isabel's. She ignored the lawyer entirely. Isabel? She said, her voice soft but carrying the immense weight of shared trauma. He threatened to declare me incompetent. What did he threaten to take away from you? The question was a direct hit, bypassing the legal defenses and striking at the core of Isabel's psychological prison. The defense attorney began to protest, but Isabel cut him off, her voice suddenly raw with years of suppressed pain. He threatened to take away my art collection, she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. He knows that my collection, the one thing I truly love, the only thing that is truly mine, is kept in a trust fund tied to the foundation. He told me that if I ever deviated from the family line, he would have my entire collection liquidated and donated to a tax-exempt group. My history, my identity, my life's work, gone. It was the only thing I had that wasn't completely his. The admission hung in the air, a devastating moment of shared vulnerability. The two women, who had been pitted against each other by the same monster, were finally communicating truth. Aurora nodded slowly. He didn't attack our finances, Isabel. He attacked our souls. He attacked the single thing that defined us outside of the Vance name. My mind, your art. The moment you realized that, you reached out. You broke ranks. That act was the bravest thing any of us has ever done. Don't let their threats of lost money turn you back into a silent victim. Money is a prison. Truth is the only true currency. Isabel's eyes, which had been fixed on the money-driven face of her lawyer, now settled on Aurora. A slow, profound realization dawned in her eyes. The idea of losing the money was terrifying, but the idea of going back to the silent, soul-crushing compliance was infinitely worse. She took a deep, shuddering breath and looked directly at Mr. Reed. I will take the immunity deal. I will give the full, complete testimony. I will detail every wire transfer, every coercive tactic, every threat. I want the world to know the truth about the Vance Foundation. I want my art to be truly mine again. Her defense attorney looked apoplectic, his carefully constructed walls of legal protection crumbling around him. You can't do this. You're forfeiting millions in future inheritance. Isabel didn't even glance at him. She looked at Aurora, a look of profound shared liberation passing between them. I have already forfeited my soul once. I won't do it again. I choose truth over treasure. Mr. Reed immediately began the legal paperwork, his face alight with professional triumph. The unexpected ally had turned into an essential co-conspirator for justice. The Vance dynasty had crumbled from within, their greatest strength, their absolute, monolithic cohesion, now shattered by the very psychological abuse they had used to maintain it. I watched the exchange with tears blurring my vision. My daughter had not only saved herself, but, in a final act of radical empathy, she had offered the hand of salvation to the woman who had helped her escape. The truth had not just liberated Aurora. It had created a new, powerful alliance against the forces of corruption. The dawn of vindication was now a rising sun of profound collective justice. A full 7 days had passed since Isabel Vance signed her immunity deal and delivered her devastating testimony. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Vance dynasty. With 2 corroborating witnesses, one the daughter of the house, the other the sister, and the ironclad financial evidence, the case was no longer simply strong. It was insurmountable. Marcus Vance's legal team, facing a mountain of irrefutable proof, was forced into a desperate retreat. I sat with Aurora in the spacious, sunlit apartment we had rented under an assumed name, watching the breaking news. The Vance financial empire was being systematically dismantled. Their assets were being seized, their foundation was permanently dissolved, and multiple high-level executives were being rounded up for questioning. The headline on the massive news screen was a simple, absolute decree: the Vance dynasty, crushed by its own silence. They never saw it coming, Mom, Aurora said softly, sipping a cup of herbal tea. She was calm, resilient, her former pallor replaced by a healthy, vibrant glow. She was dressed in comfortable, simple clothes, a deliberate rejection of the restrictive designer wardrobe Marcus had imposed upon her. Their arrogance was their one single point of failure. They were so busy looking at the macro scale, the billions, the global market, that they completely ignored the single, quiet threat right under their noses: the truth. They believed that control was absolute, my love, I replied, my voice filled with the quiet certainty of experience. They believed that money could buy silence and that fear could buy compliance. They underestimated the tenacity of a journalist and the ferocity of a mother. Our focus now had shifted from survival to the future. Aurora's immediate goal was not just to recover, but to use her unique experience to redefine her career. The 5 years of psychological captivity had given her an unparalleled insider's view of elite corruption. She was no longer just a talented investigative reporter. She was a witness, a survivor, and an expert on the pathology of wealth-fueled crime. She was already collaborating with Leo Maxwell, the independent journalist who broke the initial story, planning a series of deep-dive reports. Their new project was tentatively titled The Shadow Ledger: How the World's Elites Use Philanthropy as a Weapon of Control. "We can't just stop with Marcus." "Mom," she explained, her eyes alight with the passion I had missed so desperately. "His is just one of many similar dynasties. The system is designed to allow this level of fraud to flourish. My work now is to expose the systemic failures, the weak regulations, the complicit institutions, the culture of silence that allowed $4.5 billion to be laundered through a fake charity." I watched her, profoundly proud. This was her true vindication, not the fall of Marcus, but the spectacular, powerful rebirth of her own purpose. Just then, a call came through on the secure line. It was Sergeant Reyes. "Eleanor, Aurora, I have an update on Marcus Vance." His lawyers attempted one last desperate maneuver. They were going to try to paint the whole incident as a massive misunderstanding based on the principle of caveat emptor in the financial markets. But the DA used Isabel's testimony, which clearly outlined the years of coercion and the threat to Aurora's sanity, to completely dismantle their defense. "What was the outcome, Elena?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "The judge ruled against bail. Marcus Vance is going to prison. The DA has offered a plea deal, a minimum of 25 years, with no possibility of parole for 20 years, in exchange for him naming every co-conspirator in the overseas mining operation. The Vance dynasty is over. It's done. And it was done by the 2 women they tried to silence." A profound, quiet silence descended upon the room. Aurora and I simply looked at each other. There were no shouts of joy, no celebratory screams, only the deep, bone-deep satisfaction of justice served. The nightmare was truly, finally over. The wages of Marcus Vance's arrogance were a life behind bars and the total annihilation of his family's name. "I want to talk to Isabel," Aurora said, her voice soft but determined. "She gave up everything. Not for the money, but for the principle. I want to tell her thank you, and I want to tell her that I'll help her recover her identity. Her art is safe now, but her future is not. She is one of us now." "A survivor," I nodded, my eyes brimming with unshed tears. The final act of liberation was not just for the self, but for the community of the wounded. Aurora's journey had transformed her into a leader, a profound voice of empathy for all those who had been victimized by power. The past was a brutal, hard-won lesson. The future was a vast, open field of purpose and power, built on the solid foundation of truth. 6 months. It had taken a full half-year for the dust to settle, for the legal proceedings to conclude, and for Aurora to fully step into her role as a global figure of truth and resilience. Marcus Vance was serving his sentence. Isabel Vance, granted full immunity, was in Europe, quietly rebuilding her career as an art historian, occasionally consulting with Aurora on the Vances' art-related money laundering schemes. My daughter, my brave Aurora, was now standing on a stage, addressing an auditorium full of students, journalists, and survivors. I watched from the front row, my heart overflowing with a quiet, fierce pride. She wore a simple, elegant dress, radiating a calm, profound authority that was entirely her own. She was no longer Aurora Vance. She was Aurora Sterling, a name now synonymous with courage and integrity. "My story is not unique," she began, her voice resonating powerfully throughout the packed hall. "It is merely an extreme example of a universal truth. Control does not require a locked door. It requires a silent victim. For 5 years I lived in a gilded cage. My captor didn't take away my physical ability to leave. He took away my will to speak. He attacked the single thing that defined my soul, my mind, my voice, my autonomy." She paused. letting the immense weight of her experience settle over the audience. The moment of my liberation was not when I physically ran across the frozen lake, she continued, a slight, meaningful smile touching her lips. The moment of my true freedom was the instant I decided to stop protecting my own silence. I realized that the Vance dynasty's entire foundation, $4.5 billion in fraudulent transactions, decades of influence, was supported by one single, vulnerable column, the secrecy of my testimony. The moment that column was struck by the single uncompromised word of truth, the entire structure had to collapse. She turned to address the younger generation in the audience, her message shifting from reflection to powerful, active guidance. To every young woman, to every victim of psychological control, to every journalist chasing a difficult story, never, ever believe that your safety is worth the price of your silence. The most dangerous currency in the world is not the stolen billions. It is the currency of unspoken truth. Use your voice as your ultimate weapon. She finished with a profound final thought, a lesson I would carry for the rest of my days. My journey has taught me the most valuable lesson of all. Healing is not the absence of trauma. Healing is the presence of purpose. Don't let your trauma define you as a victim. Let it define you as an expert, as an advocate, as the single most powerful voice against the injustice you survived. My pain is now my podium, and my purpose is to ensure that no other woman has to stand shivering in the snow while her captors celebrate by the fireplace. We are the survivors. We are the change. We are the truth. I stood up, tears of pure, unadulterated pride finally streaming down my face. She embraced me, her arms strong and secure. "It's over, Mom," she whispered into my ear, "and the next chapter is ours." I looked out at the audience, at the hopeful, inspired faces, and felt the immense weight of the last 6 months lift entirely from my shoulders. The educational value of our story was not in the tragedy, but in the triumphant resilience. The future was not about the fall of the Vance dynasty, but about the rise of Aurora Sterling. Did you feel that? That shattering moment when a mother's love became a battering ram against a corrupt empire? Did your heart ache when Aurora realized her silence was the only thing protecting her captor? The most profound lesson for all of us, especially as we navigate the second chapter of our lives, is this: never accept the narrative written for you by fear. Every woman over 50 has a fierce strength, a wisdom that can dismantle any gilded cage. Justice isn't just a legal outcome. It is the emotional vindication that allows us to find purpose in our deepest pain. If this story of courage, truth, and unbreakable maternal bond resonated with your soul, please press that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I promise you, our next story will be another journey into the heart of darkness, proving that resilience always prevails. Don't miss the next video!